Hey, so welcome back. My name is Zach Winters, and this is Winter Brothers Stories. And today is the memorial video that we had spoken about previously. We want to cover Amber's complete life. This is, of course, Amber Costello. She's one of the Gilgo Four. She's also the last to go missing. She played an instrumental role. Obviously, it's tragic what happened, but at least the one good thing that did come from it is that Rex Harriman, that demon, he got caught because of what happened here. He will not, be able to live out his life a free man. A lot of us worried that he might not have ever got caught, and it seems because of Amber that's not the case. Amber's a really good person. I've spoken with, a few people that have known her. In this, we've done an interview with Melissa Wright, who's one of her childhood best friends. They're described as sisters. They lived together. They would take showers together, or baths together, I should say. They were very, very close. And the interview humanized her more than anything else I've seen out there. Melissa was also gracious enough to give us some pictures that have never been seen, as well as screen caps from her Facebook that we're going to intersplice in this video. I didn't want to focus on the tragic spots because, like I said, she's more than just a tragic victim, a tragic figure. Obviously, there are some things that are going to be a little sad. We all have things in our life that may be rough, and they may leave scars, but they also make us who we are. So that type of stuff, while I debated whether I was going to add it, I ultimately decided that you wouldn't get a full complete picture of who Amber Costello was without it. So just keep in mind that you're going to see some stuff that may be a little tragic, but you're also going to see a lot of light. Amber did have a lot of light. From everyone I spoke with, she was selfless. She would do anything for others. It was in a way that she didn't even protect herself. She wanted to help. She was also a very motherly figure. Children were very important. And you'll see that in the story when we get further into it. All right? But before we get too far into it, let's take it all the way back to the beginning. All right. So Amber Costello, she was born on February 10th, 1983. All right. So her parents were Al Overstreet and Margaret Sassy. All right. They would also have a older child, Kimberly Overstreet, who was 6 years older than Amber. All right, so Kim was born in 1977. This was back actually more up north. This would have been in Philadelphia, or at least 15 minutes out of Philadelphia in the suburbs. So they're originally from Pennsylvania. All right, so Margie, the mother, came from a very wealthy family, a well-to-do, upper middle class, while Al came from a wrong side of the track. All right, so the families, it's kind of like a Romeo-Juliet situation. Families didn't agree with them dating, and eventually Margaret and Al decided they were completely in love, and they, run away together. They elope, and Margie's family actually excommunicated her. So that was out of the picture. At this point, it's just Al and Margie. And they decide at some point to move to Gastonia, North Carolina. It seems that's where Al was from, and they had a lot of extended family. So in 1988, when Amber was 5 years old, the family moves from Pennsylvania to North Carolina. And in the Gastonia area, Al Overstreet with his whole family, these were the happiest times. All right, so by all accounts, the happy years, the parents were wildly in love. They're young. Everyone talks about how in love they were. They would have family dinners. There was extended family for the holidays. And, for a small moment, things were really good. They were really good for the family. Al and Marge would work menial jobs. All right, so what we see here is that Al would work at a donut shop while Margie, the mother, would work at a seafood restaurant as a waitress. Because of this, they might have been very in love, but there was not a lot of money. They would live in a garage that was converted into an apartment, a motel. On top of that, this might be a middle class to lower middle class neighborhood, but it seems that they were always even poorer than the rest of them around. Maybe they would go hungry sometimes, and there wouldn't be a lot in the house.
I was raised by a single mother. Sure.
I didn't have a lot myself, but I definitely had more than she did. She was happy. I mean, material things really weren't her thing. That wasn't what made her happy. I think just living made her happy.
Yeah.
Seeing smiles on people that she loved, like making people smile was her thing.
Okay, so like I said, the years leading up to Amber's 5th birthday were easy, great times, very happy, carefree. Eventually, in late 1988, when Amber was 5 years old, this would all come crashing down. All right, so there's a very tragic incident here where Amber, Kim, and another local girl all go with a local man. His name was James. He was 26 years old, and he took the girls to go play tennis. Amber would tell the story different ways depending on who she was talking to, but it's agreed that this man, James, did sexually assault her. All right, and this would leave her emotionally and physically scarred. We'll get more into that in a little bit, but let's talk about actually how the story goes. So one way she would recount it is that James had dragged her into the bushes, and that's where this assault took place. And then another way she would recount it is that her mom, Margie, had found James and Amber in the bed. Him being a young and heavy man, Amber's mom, Margie, would come in and try to grab him from the bed, but he was too heavy and she couldn't. Later, she would blame herself. This was something that weighed really heavy on her, and it had a profound effect. She would later have a mental breakdown and was hospitalized for it. The story gets further blurred now when Kim recounts what happens after. So Kim would tell in the book Lost Girls about how her father Al would try to shoot him with a shotgun, James, and James would go to jail for the assault. Al says that he only pointed the gun, didn't shoot at him. However, in our research, we couldn't find any police reports or arrest reports to back up this version. I'm assuming there must have been some type of incident where Al confronted him, but maybe it's just a little more exaggerated about the shooting. We don't even really have a last name on this James character, and like I said, there doesn't seem to be anything backing it up from what we found or in the book Lost Girls. So, like I was saying before, Marjorie Overstreet, she blamed herself for this incident. She was hospitalized. At the same time, around the same time, she also had a bleeding ulcer. She was drinking very heavily. She liked to drink Milwaukee Beast, and this was just something that exasperated the lifetime illness. Ultimately, that ulcer would claim her life, in a few decades, in 2005. Now, while Margie was hospitalized, Al gets a DWI and he goes to jail for a short period of time. Amber and Kim have to live with family at this point, but eventually when Margie gets out and Al gets out, the family splits up. They don't come back together. So what you see here is that Amber loved her mother to death, and she goes with her mother. They move to Charlotte and move in with a family member.
She loved her mom.
Okay.
She loved her mom deeply. She really did. Her mom, out of both of her parents, she was a mama's girl.
Kim, for her part, went with her father, and when he was doing what he was doing, she was living with him, but she would also stay with friends because he was in and out of jail and rehabs for what his alcoholism had caused. Now, the assault itself would physically and emotionally scar Amber. This is where we see a fork in her road here. Later, she wouldn't be able to have children because of the scarring that had happened. We'll really get into a little more detail on that, but just note that it doesn't take a lot of insight to see that someone that has that happen so young that it would have an effect on their psyche. A lot of times when you do see something like that, it's not surprising that they would later turn to hard drugs to try to forget, to numb the pain. And, ultimately, I think it's sad because, as she got older, she might have been able to get the therapy that she needed so that she could have the life that she wanted. Nobody grows up thinking, hey, I want to be a drug addict. I'm sure ultimately she would have overcome that because she seems like such a good person. She just didn't have the chance to get the help because she was taken so young. We also see that later she had trouble setting boundaries. She putting other people first, even at a fault to herself. The type of person that would literally give the shirt off her own back. I'm not a psychologist, but I would think that some of that stems back from what's going on with the family. The family are both drinking, and then also this assault.
Amber just liked to talk to people. She liked to hear people's stories. If someone was in trouble, she would try to find a way to help them. Even if it was a money thing, and Amber didn't have any money, she would go and network and ask friends, hey, can you help this person? Yeah. If she didn't have the means, it was word of mouth. She would literally reach out to everybody.
All right, now we bring it to 1996. So Amber is now a preteen. In 1996, Amber went to Grove Middle School in Wilmington, North Carolina. At this point, the family had reconciled and they all moved back in together. They're living in a motel. While at this middle school, this is where she meets Melissa Wright, who is her best friend from childhood. In fact, I want to insert a little anecdote here of how they first met. I think it's very cute.
Okay, so we met Myrtle Grove Middle School, 7th grade, 95, 96, somewhere in there. It wasn't the first day of school. I remember that, though. I remember it wasn't the first day of school. It's almost like she came in the middle of the year. Because she wasn't there, and then bam, here's this kid. So
this is in North Carolina, right?
Yes, this is in Wilmington, North Carolina, Myrtle Grove Middle School. It's in the area called Monkey Junction.
Okay.
The first time I saw her, like I said, I'm 5'3". I haven't grown since I was 12 years old. I was a short kid in 7th grade. I was one of the youngest in my class. And I remember seeing this really short girl, like way shorter than everyone else. And I was like, whoa, is that like a 4th grader? And then she was in a group of people and she was talking. They were in the hallway talking because classes were changing. And she was holding her notebooks up against her chest and she laughed. And the laugh was just so energetic and loud. It carried through over into the corridor and it made me, turn like, whoa, for her to be so little, she's very loud. Yeah. And that's where I was like, I have to meet her. Like, she's unique. She's just looked cool to me. And we started talking. And I remember we had a couple classes together. And we would, snicker and make faces and stuff in class. But mostly we would do our talking when classes were changing.
Okay.
And we would, talk about what so-and-so said in whatever class or whatever rumors were going around. It was girl talk. We would sit there and tell each other what rumors we had heard. Oh, no, I didn't know about that, that kind of thing. And we'd snicker and we'd go back on to our next class.
So the family, like I said, reconciles. They move into Monkey Junction in Wilmington, North Carolina. This is also where Kim has the first of her many children with a local boy named Mootney. The child was someone that Amber just absolutely adored. When she came home from school, she would take care of the child. Her mother, Margie, would be drinking, and she would tell her mother, to go lay down, go sleep, do whatever, and she would take care of the child while Kim was out working and going to college.
Marissa, Kim's firstborn, is in the baby swing. Okay. She's 6 months or so. And Amber's mom is on the couch because she would babysit while Amber was in school. And Amber would pick up Marissa and she'd give her hugs and kisses and tell her mom, hey, Mom, if you're tired, go upstairs, take a nap. I've got the baby. You look tired. And so Mom would go upstairs to go take a nap, get some rest. And Amber would take over. She would take care of Marissa. And we would sit there on the couch. And I don't remember them having cable.
Okay.
I remember Rabbit Ears being on the TV. So we probably had a choice of 3 channels. And I remember sitting there and watching TV with her, and we would crack open our school books and we would do homework while she had Marissa in her lap.
Got it.
Marissa was her baby, basically. Even though it was Kim's, it was like, oh, this is my child. Amber loved babies. She was the same way with my nephew. The picture of us Thanksgiving, she loved babies.
To expand a little bit more on the family's dynamics and the poverty they were living in, on Amber's birthday in 1998, so this was February 10th, 1998, her family did not buy anything for her. No presents, no cake, nothing. Obviously there was some addiction going on with the family, with the mother and the father, and then you mix that with the poverty. So her birthday went unnoticed. Melissa Wright, being her friend, went out with her mother. They went to the body shop and they bought her a whole bunch of clothes. They got her a sheer black button-up shirt with little blue flowers on it. Of course, the blue flowers was because blue was her favorite color. They also got her a white shirt to go underneath and some denim shorts, and they wrapped it up really nice with the ribbon and the bow, and they put a card on it. And when they gave this to Amber, she was just in tears. She couldn't believe that someone was celebrating her birthday like that. This really cemented how much they cared for each other. It was definitely a big deal. It was also a special day because in North Carolina, obviously the weather's a little warmer because it's the South, but that day in particular, it snowed, which is something that's absolutely really rare. So you have the snow coming down in February and, this surprise present, and this really moved Amber. It had an effect on her. I think it's a really nice story. Sometimes it's these little things like that really allow you to know someone. So at some point, Melissa would move in with Amber.
And instead of me staying home by myself, because my mom was a single mom, we had the idea, hey, Mom, can I move into Amber's? Amber, there was 3 bedrooms in their house.
Okay.
One had a waterbed in it. That was her mom and dad's room. There was nothing else in that room but a waterbed and a fan. That's all that was in there. Her sister's room it was either a full or a queen size bed, 1 dresser, and Marissa's crib.
Mm.
And then there was a 3rd room that faced out at the front of the apartment that looked over the basketball courts, and it had nothing in it. Like, there wasn't a bed. There was a little bit of stuff piled on the floor, shoebox, few clothes. And that, I guess, was Amber's room.
Wow.
Because we would go up in that room and I'd bring my boombox over and we would turn on music and we would dance in that room. And because that's basically what we did with our time as teenagers was listen to music and dance. And before my bed moved in, we would sleep on the waterbed in her parents' room. And I remember her mom would sleep on the couch. I don't remember where Dad would sleep. He may have been at work. I don't remember.
Her mother was working a overnight shift, so she'd be working from like 7 to 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning. And at that point, again, there was no bed in that room. This is where Melissa brings the bed for the 2 of them. Melissa would talk about, some of the stuff they do. They would be smoking Newports in the bathroom. Amber would be in the bathtub while Melissa was sitting, on the toilet, and she would have to actually give her the smoke because her hands were all wet. But they would share it. Actually, her family would allow them to smoke in the house, so it wasn't a big deal. This is all while they were listening to, Tupac and Aaliyah and other hip hop artists that were big in that, early, like mid to late 90s period.
And we would hang out. We would go in my room. We would turn on the radio because we both love music. Yeah. And we'd grab the hairbrush or the curling iron, not plugged in or anything, but grab the curling iron and, we're singing. And I remember we all loved Aaliyah. We loved Genuine. We loved Tupac, Biggie. Amber knew all the words to all the songs. She loved music. Yeah. And we would just giggle and roll on the floor, eat all of my mom's snacks out of the kitchen. And kind of ransack my bedroom, trying on clothes and just doing girl stuff, painting each other's nails, that kind of stuff.
Melissa would also talk about how when Amber met boys, she would fib about her age. Because of her small stature, you gotta remember she was tinier than most people, and then Kim being, her guiding stone being older, she would tell people she was older. Instead of 14, she'd be 17 or 18. She wanted to be more mature than she was, and she wanted people to see it that way as well. Now, at some point, Margie, the mother, would be hospitalized for the bleeding ulcer. With her drinking, it definitely wasn't doing her any favors, but because she was hospitalized, she couldn't work. And then you have Al, who was, abusive, and he's drinking, and he wasn't a help either. At that point, Kim was in college. But she had met a girl named Teresa who ran a place called Co-Ed Confidential. This was like your typical bachelor party type thing. It wasn't like a straight escort type thing. But this was how Kim helped out the family. She was able to bring in money. I think Melissa does a pretty good job of explaining the first time Kim told Amber what she was doing. So I'm going to show that real quick.
Kim started working on a call service. I remember Amber not liking that and telling her no.
Cheers.
Please, that's not safe. I love you. Please don't do that.
Yeah.
But Kim's an adult. She can do what she wants. Amber was a minor. We did our own thing. Amber wasn't like that. Kim, she looked up to Kim, and she loved her a lot. And if she had problems that she didn't want to talk to her parents about, she would go to Kim and try to get guidance from Kim, or she'd come to me.
Now, of course, it didn't start off as, sleeping with anyone, but eventually it did build up into that. Kim would say that she wished that she could get Amber into it, but she was too young. Even for Kim's part, she saw the money that was able to be brought in. She would make $500 like nothing on a shift. A weekend, $1,000. And for this being, early 2000s or late 90s, even in today's money, that's a good amount, but it's even more so then. And that's how they stayed afloat. Kim would, for her part, love to go to Victoria's Secret, and she would buy this lingerie for the dates and perfume. And Amber liked to steal the clothes, and she would use the perfumes on herself, dressing up like her sister. Kim hated when this happened, and she would make her rip the clothes off right then and there. But from what I understand, this could be some typical sister stuff, but it's pretty funny to think that she's going through the closet. So Teresa, for her part, didn't have any pressure. If the girls wanted to work, they could. If they made enough money, that's great. But what really comes in is that she would throw these drug-fueled parties. All right, so this is where, cocaine and heroin came in. At some point in her late teens, Amber started working the phones while Kim was still doing the stripping. And this is where they would be introduced to the drugs. Amber got hooked on heroin, and it's not a stretch of the imagination to see that from there she might have also been doing the escorting. Now, after a while of using, she would obviously become hooked, and if she didn't have it, she would get sick. So one night she is sick, and she's hanging out with a girl named Crystal. Now, Crystal convinced Amber not to go out and get more, and basically introduced her to God. This would have a very, very large effect on her life and where she would go from here. Amber, for her part, took it to heart, and she prayed, and she would look to God for guidance. We even see later in life, she's posting on Facebook, I love Jesus. We'll show some of that. After meeting Crystal, she would lead Amber to ultimately join the Open Door Church in Leland, North Carolina. At this church, she would attend regularly. She would also work in the nursery. This is where she would meet Mike Wilhelm. Mike Wilhelm is her first husband. It was very short-lived. There's not a whole lot of info on, exactly what happened, but it seems that Amber was looking to reach out and have a family. and she was quick to marry this man. However, he was 20 years older than her, and it was a flash in the pan marriage. This is something that maybe lasted all of a few weeks, a month at best. She had relapsed, and at that point they divorced. So you have a series of things that go on all in a row. You have the pastor, she gets clean, the pastor passes away, and then that church dissolves. That pastor, who basically took her in like family, when he died, crushed her, and then she relapses. She gets clean again, and this is where she marries Michael Wilhelm, and this lasts all of a month. And then she relapses again, and that's where the divorce, the first divorce happens. At that point, her life is a mess. You can see here that she's reaching out. She's trying to get love. She's trying to get family. And each time it crumbles, bad things happen. It's a cycle here where she relapses, she gets clean, she reaches out for love, and it just rinse and repeat. So at this point, she needed a break. And this is where Kim and Michael Donato, who's dating Kim, and Amber all moved to Florida. All right, so they moved down to Florida. Kim and Amber's mother, Marjorie, passes away in 2005 of the stomach ulcer that we previously mentioned. And immediately when they get down there, Amber goes her own way. Kim and her boyfriend with the children, they go their way. Amber goes her way. And then she gets hooked up with the churches at that point. So we see another period of her trying to find something bigger than herself, whereas Kim, it seems by all accounts, was more cool, and Amber was more spiritual. So she's looking for something bigger, love, family, God, and that's where we see that split. Now, while in Florida and on her own, with a zeal that has been unseen up until this point, she throws herself back into the church. She goes to a place called Celebrate Recovery, which is a church-based group that was helping with opiate addiction and helping people get clean. She gets baptized. We'll show those pictures here. She attends the choir. Basically, her life is revolving completely around this church. It's something that's very important to her, and it allows her some sobriety. Life was good at this point, and it allowed her to open up again, where she's reaching out to the higher self and she finds some fulfillment. Now, it's not too long after she gets down there, within a 2-year period of doing this church, that in 2007 she meets Don Costello. All right, and that's where she gets her name changed from Overstreet to Costello. She gets married. Now, Don is older. This seems to be one of the most serious relationships in her life. Ultimately, they would get married and they would try to have children. This is something that they struggled with. After quite a few cases of her not being able to conceive, they do adopt. And it's something that's a little more under the table than an official adoption. There's a little boy named Gabe, and through the church, they become the sole custody of Gabe. And we do have some pictures here that I'd like to show. You can see that Amber seems happy. She's very fulfilled in these pictures. It's a lifelong goal for her. Family and marriage and love, and just something, I guess, to supplement, the childhood that she had is something that she was, always reaching for. And for a short period of time, again, with Don and Gabe, she found it. And we see on Amber's Facebook page at the time that she thanks God and she believes that God put Don in her life, and she seems very thankful for it. There's a lot of tranquility in the post here. I'm going to put a few up here right now, so take a look. Amber and Don live in Don's condo. It seems to be in a very nice neighborhood. This is also where we see Amber start working in the nursery, where she takes care of children, something that Melissa Wright had also, alluded to. So it was a positive experience for her at this point. A little speculation on my part. I would imagine with Gabriel, CPS had stepped in, and that's how Don and Amber had become, the sole custody of Gabe. I'm sure she saw some of her own childhood in Gabe. We don't know exactly why CPS was involved, but obviously it wasn't a great situation, at least in that moment. And at that point, I'm sure, her not having the greatest childhood, loving kids, maybe she felt that this was something that God also put in her life. And, she took care of this child. You can see with the Christmas presents under the tree. She's always hugging him and seems to be generally glowing when he's in the pictures with her, something that you didn't really see in the earlier pictures. Amber was so excited about Gabe that she would actually even take Gabe up to North Carolina to meet her father, Al. And at this point, she was encouraging her father to find God as well. And she had Al call Gabe, grandfather. That's grandpa. It was supposed to be a traditional role that she really wanted him to play. Obviously, with some of his issues and the short, span of this, it didn't pan out. Unfortunately, like most things in Amber's life, this was a period that was short-lived. It lasted start to finish about 15 months. The marriage with Don. Don didn't like to talk about it. He would say something about, being deceived, that she wasn't truthful, and that's all he would talk publicly about it. But this was obviously something that crushed Amber again, and then we see a period of, self-destruction. Not long after, she's arrested for stealing toothpaste. She tells the cop that she's working at a public library. It's not a big arrest, obviously, but, it's kind of sad that, she got that low that quick that she had to steal something as essential as toothpaste. It kind of shows the bigger picture of where she was right after this separation, divorce, and this would have brought you into 2009. Now, when she was arrested, she was ordered to go to court in March of 2009, but by the time this happened, she was long gone. She moved up to Florida. From what we see in the Lost Girl books is that Dave at this point had been involved with Kim. And for whatever was going on there, maybe a little teasing, going back and forwards, the book paints Dave as someone that liked to take care of people. And with that, he made friends with Amber through Kim and flew her up to New York and let her move in. Whether that's exactly how it transpired, I'm not sure. But we do know that Amber ended up there around that time, and that brings us to the current day, or at least the current period that most people know about. I really don't want to get too far into New York. I think that's been addressed ad nauseum. We all pretty much know the details. If you don't, the stuff's out there. But the takeaway here is that Amber always looked for something higher than herself. She seemed to be a very spiritual person, but there was always something in the way that would sabotage it, whether that be herself or something external. And when that external, setback came, she would just crumble. She would crumble under the pressure. Al, her father, would talk about how the girls could come off very similar. They're talking about Amber and Kim. They were both very chatty and outgoing, but the main difference that he brought up was that Amber was always looking for something higher, whereas Kim would look for herself. And we see that time and time again with